During the Zephyr conflict, I fought alongside the forces of humanity and got to experience their strange customs firsthand. They had a strange need to arrange their food in neat stacks, which they called stackers. They were always in the mood for games, but they would only explain what they were playing to let you know you lost. They were also obsessed with touching everything within reach with an almost religious fervor. Command thought that if enough troops could make it to the planet's surface, they could set up a beachhead and wait for the rest of the troops to arrive. During the descent to the planet, all I could do was close my eyes and hope we would make it out alive. I fell into a state of near hypnosis to the point where my comrade Octus had to physically tap on my helmet to get my attention, telling me to tune my radio frequency to channel 21. At first, I was confused as that frequency was reserved for our human allies, but he insisted that I wouldn't believe what they were doing, so I reset the radio frequency in my helmet. And what I heard was something I never thought I'd hear on a battlefield. They were singing. The frequency was filled with numerous voices so loud that I had to turn down the volume, but it seemed like every human participating in the assault was involved. My translation device tried to keep up, but the high-intensity singing of the humans caused it to cut in and out, only catching every other word. I wanted to listen more closely to their song, but the enemy's anti-aircraft fire began to heavily bombard our landing craft. Each explosion caused the ship to shake violently. When a shell exploded right beneath us, a powerful shockwave threw several of my comrades from their seats, slamming them into the opposite wall. They hit hard, and after they fell to the floor, they didn't get up again. The only thing I could think of was that this was the moment I was going to die. This was the end of my existence in this universe. I was going to return to the dust and atoms of the cosmos. As I adjusted my thoughts, I could only hear the humans singing on the radio. They were probably still under a lot of enemy fire, but they were singing as if nothing was wrong. I was so focused on their singing that I forgot about my problems until the landing craft hit the planet's surface with a loud thud, and the boarding ramp came down, which jolted me awake. The battle that followed was 6 hours of running and shooting as we tried to make a safe landing zone for reinforcements. I got separated from my unit several times and ended up in the humans' designated areas. To my surprise, the humans were still singing while wearing their blue and gold armor and blasting their voices from speakers in their helmets. They fought their way through, advancing block by block, one of them taking a lot of hits to the chest, but the hits bounced off the armor and only left paint scratches. I couldn't believe it. This crazy singing, a human jumped over the barricade, put an explosive on the anti-aircraft weapon, and then jumped back as it went off. They stood in the smoking flames, panting and taking a short break when a sniper bullet from across the street hit them in the head, blowing off a large part of their skull. It was the first time I had seen a human die in the battle. But I didn't have time to think about it because the other humans were still singing as they charged towards the sniper. The first landing forces that made it back to safety were sent back to orbit to heal and reorganize with forces from my species. I was one of 20 soldiers who survived. I imagined the humans might have lost a similar number of people until the pilot mentioned that extra spacecraft were dispatched to bring their forces back. Despite the intense battle, they only had 3 soldiers perish in the fight, including the one I witnessed fall. I felt beside myself. These reckless warriors had survived the battle, and despite the heavy losses, only 3 had perished. Upon returning to the ship, I sought them out for an explanation. They were stationed in the lower decks of the ship, segregated from the other crew outside their area were 2 fully armed soldiers. Initially, they wouldn't let me through until one of them recognized me from the urban combat. Then I was led inside, finding many humans in the midst of feasting and laughter. Between them were 2 long rows of tables. Between the tables were several bonfires, each with different animals roasting on them. At the end of the tables, there were 3 large PES, each with 3 bodies on them. As I walked through the crowd, many stopped their laughter, looking at me, their eyes filled with suspicion. Halfway through the crowd, a tall human stepped in front of us and blocked our way. He demanded to know why I was there and said that if I didn't give him a good answer, he would personally kick me out. The soldier who recognized me said that I had seen one of the soldiers die and would tell their story. The tall human glared at me, his eyes as cold as the new moon of my species. The crowd fell silent, and the human finally gave in and laughed loudly and proudly. I drank, ate, laughed, and even bragged about what I had done in battle. At the end of the feast, I was asked to talk about the last moments of the human soldier I had seen. I found out his name was Morris Yu, and he had been in the human forces since the beginning of the campaign. I talked about how he fought alone and destroyed the enemy war machine all by himself. I told of the sniper bullet that took him down. All gathered humans said in unison he flies to the hall of Odin. With that saying, the matches were lit, and the body slowly turned to ash. I imagined this might have significant ceremonial meaning in human culture. But I couldn't understand. After the funeral was over, I asked one of the soldiers the question I came to them, for why do you sing in battle? The man took a big puff from a wooden pipe, then blew out a cloud of smoke before answering long ago. My people were seafaring raiders and conquerors. He began. Our gods watched over us, and if we proved ourselves worthy, we would be sent to them to fight alongside them in their hall forever. There was a war band, led by a giant named Osmond Fryer. He loved singing as much as he loved fighting, so he had his warriors sing in every battle, because it pleased him. Did they agree to this foolish act? I asked. A human grinned. After he took down the first three, who laughed at him with a single swing of his axe, they agreed. He finished his story. What was truly astonishing was not seeing these warriors sing, but that they were quite good at it. It was said their singing could make the Valkyries weep. Eventually a god named Brej noticed Osmond's warband, and took a liking to them. Like the Valkyries, he too was moved by their singing, and decided to reward them with his patronage. He used ancient magic, making the warriors invulnerable to all harm as long as they sang. So this war band grew in fame and glory, going through several battles with impossible foes, always coming out unscathed. They first swept across the northern seas, then across the continent of Europe, and soon the whole world knew of Osmond. By then they finally caught the attention of the king of the gods. Odin watched these mighty warriors and wanted to bring them to his hall for eternal battle. But despite the challenges they faced, they always came out victorious, no matter what kind of enemy Odin put in their path or what kind of plots he laid against them. They refused to fall. Odin learned of Braige's patronage and tortured the god to force him to reveal his secret. After 7 days and 7 nights, Braige told Odin of the spell he cast, and that it couldn't be undone. But that was enough for Odin to protect his warriors, the human said, with a devilish grin. In the most recent battle, Odin took the form of a mighty warrior, lurking on the battlefield, looking for his prey. He waited for each warrior to catch their breath and stop singing, then struck again and again, killing them one by one. By the end of the day, only Osmond was left fighting Odin. Though he kept singing, he eventually ran out of breath and was killed. So you sing for that reason? I asked the human. Because you believe your gods will protect you. The human laughed and pointed to the 3 wood piles. Didn't you mention that Morris was only killed after he stopped singing? I tried to counter him with some logic, some reality-based reasoning, but I couldn't. I left that human area with a profoundly new view of myself in the universe. The next time I made a combat landing, my comrades laughed. When I started singing, I wasn't sure it was funny, but I hoped that somehow the gods of mankind would at least find me funny enough to let me live. In the months that followed, I found that I began to understand some of the customs of the humans, and even began to appreciate them, their strength and drive, their joy and hope, even their strange sense of humor. I started to understand why they sang in battle, why they stayed positive even though they knew they were going to die, and what their beliefs and myths were. As I learned about their customs and habits, I came to understand their food, games, and touch. In the months after the end of the Zephyr conflict, when my friends and I went back to our homes, we were greeted as heroes, praised as warriors, and honored as fighters. But despite my pride, I also felt a deep sense of loss. I started to miss the humans who fought with me. I missed their laughter, songs, and excitement. I missed their sandwiches, games, and touches. I missed the human race.